MiniWarGaming's Beat the Cooler Bat Rep!
Orks turn 2 begins with the Orks starting to bring in their reserves. Dan plays or rolls off for all of his flyers, and he gets 4 out of 6, which is pretty much perfectly statistical. And so they start piling in all over the place, just trying to bring in his flyers, some behind the buildings, over here. He's got to line them all up because he wants to put everything he can into killing my hive tyrants, which would definitely be a big plus. Now, as you can see in the top left there, I am actually ahead by 1 point. The Tyranids are up because we did get first blood. That probably won't last long as he plans to fire right back at me. And that blast doesn't hurt the hive tyrant because it is actually flying right now. And in hindsight, I definitely just realized that he moved and shot and then moved the rest of his army. I didn't notice that. And this is my second time editing this because we had a big overhaul for Season 2. But anyway, here he's moving up his orcs, the knobs move up, his boys move up, the Killican moves up, and basically his whole army just advances. The orcs scurry around through the difficult terrain, and he casts his weird boy abilities, which both go off without a hitch. And the first group, they teleport, and he decides to teleport right behind my Tyranid warriors there. They actually deep strike, teleport, move, and they scatter a little bit, but they're fine. They just pile up behind the Tyranids in the back. So they all heap themselves up right there. And this orc here, he gets a zap, which does a melt a hit, I believe, and kills one of my warriors. The Meganobs start shooting their shooters, trying to knock the flyers down. Gets a hit, fails to wound, and it does not... Oh, I think I reroll this one. It does not ground him, so that's certainly a good thing. Now he's shooting another unit of boys at my other flying hive tyrant, which he does get a few hits, but he gets no wounds. And I pass my grounding test. Now the knobs fire, shooting their shooters, and they get a bunch of hits, and they do get a wound, but I make my save, but I fail my grounding test, and on a strength 9 hit, he fails to wound. So the hive tyrant crashes to the ground, and that is my HQ, my warlord. And so he's firing away now with his shooters from his super shooters from his bomber, which it's 1 saved, and I make my feel no pain because he does have it thanks to his psychic abilities. Now he shoots the other super shooter at the other hive tyrant, trying to knock it down, gets a bunch of hits. I fail 2 of the saves, and then I have to do a grounding test, which I failed at as well. And he does take another wound from the grounding test, so that hive tyrant's down to 1 wound. The boys in the back shoot their shooters at my warriors, and they get a couple hits, couple wounds, but I only fail 1 save, so 1 takes 1 wound. And now he fires his other super shooter at the other warriors, which is hitting on 3s, re-rolling, and then wounding on 2s, and I don't get a save. So he straight up kills 1 and wounds the other one down to 1. Then the other super shooter fires at the other group, getting a bunch more hits and a bunch more wounds, and I lose another 2. And I lose another 1 and take a wound on the other one. And now he shoots the other hive tyrant with his... Or rather, I'm shooting him. I'm doing my stand and shoot. And I get a few hits and a few wounds, but he has a 2-up save, so his Meganobs easily get in. And they then charge the hive tyrant. There we go. So Gazgul and the knobs charge in, and then the knobs charge the other hive tyrant, which gets its stand and shoot, gets a few hits and a few wounds, but he has a 5-up and a 5-up because he got feel no pain, so he makes everything there as well. And then they make their charge distance and easily get in. And then just for fun, the Killican, I believe, tries to come in there as well. After he gets all the knobs in, of course. So knobs pile in. They've got big choppas and power claws, so they'll be able to eat that pretty good. And the Killican, he does not make it. This is what happens when Gazgul gets in a charge. Dan doesn't know what to do because he's very afraid of the giant monsters.
Well, yeah.
Like all classical orcs, when it comes down to it, he doesn't know whether to fight or not.
What?
You don't get a rebuttal.
I want to call my wog, but I wish I just would have called it. Then I'd waste a full turn of Daka shooting. I wasn't sure if that way I was going to be grounded or not.
So after his little debate there, Dan did decide that he's going to wog, and so Gazgul has a 2-up invuln. I try and do my smash attacks. I get 2 hits. I get 2 wounds. He just needs to roll a 1, and he does not. So his warlord survives, and then they swing away with their power claws, and they have a whole bunch of attacks, and they kill the hive tyrant right then and there. So it goes down, and they wander off from that defeat or that victory. The other hive tyrant, my warlord, though, is still alive at this point, and he gets a bunch of attacks against them. starting off, I've decided that I'm going to do my regular attacks, see if I can get a couple wounds. 3 wounds off the start, or 3 hits, then 2 wounds, and he makes both of his 5-ups again. So that's a bunch that he's made so far. He gets his 3-inch movement and moves up a little bit to get his big choppas in and his power claws. And I believe these are just the choppas, and I fail. Oh no, these are his power claws, and I fail those saves, go down to 1 wound. And these are the power claws, that's what's going on now. Power claws attack, and I fail 2 out of 3 5-ups, and so that Hive Tyrant goes down, and the Tyranids, or the Orcs, score a point for Warlord kill, and begin to move across the board, getting closer to the Warriors, because they really want to get in there, fight them. Tyranids turn 2 begins, calling in our reserves. We get the Doom, 2 Trygons, but we don't get the Carnifex. The Doom scatters a little bit, climbs out of his spore pod. These guys, I put them down at the same time, but I counted them as not being there for purposes of moving, because I knew what I was going to do, and I knew they'd pretty much land where I want, because they will correct themselves like a drop pod. And so they land easily enough. The Warriors move around, getting ready to go into combat with their bone swords. The Doom begins using its psychic abilities to mess up the Orcs nearby, and the Orcs actually fail 1 invuln, but oh, and he makes his feel no pain, so he's all right over there as well. Then we've got the attacks from the Trygon firing away here, blowing up one of the tanks, which easily goes away. The other Trygon attacks the Killacan, whole bunch of attacks, and it explodes quite easily as well, or it wrecks. Now the Orcs are getting to stand and shoot against the Warriors, who then charge in, get into close combat, and the boys are going to get to shoot against the Warriors over here, and they get a few wounds, but I make my armor save, and so they charge in over there. Now the combat begins. Now I did this wrong. I added 1 too many attacks on each guy. I didn't realize that you don't get the 2 close combat weapon bonus, so I was 3 attacks higher than it should have been. But from what you can see here, it really didn't make a big difference. It might have, I guess, in an overall, but Dan was okay with it in the end because I realized what had happened almost right away. And so, yeah, my bad. Won't happen again. Didn't happen again. 1 time right there. And so the fight ends over there with the Orcs getting slaughtered, because even with the few extra attacks, I still beat him by like 7. So he loses and gets overrun, and the Warriors go running off, trying to get into little bits of cover so they don't get eaten up by the super shoot of flyers. Fight begins between the Warriors and the Knobs, and there's a bit of an issue with that.
Okay, so the way Feel No Pain works is after you've taken an unsaved wound, you get Feel No Pain if it doesn't cause instant death. The way Bone Swords work is after you take an unsaved wound, you do a leadership check on 2 or 3 dice, in this case 3 dice, and it causes instant death. Because they attack, as they happen at the same time, we're going to roll off. 4 up, he gets his Feel No Pain. He does.
Hooray!
So with that decided, Dan just needs to make his invulns and or 4-ups. Or end his Feel No Pain. So he only loses 1 guy, and out of 3 5-ups, he only loses 1. And then he attacks back with his big choppas, and does 2 wounds there, puts 1 down to 1, and then attacks back with the power claws as well, which he misses a whole bunch, but he does hit with 2 and outright kills 2 of the Warriors right there. So there's only 1 left, but he is fearless. And so that's almost it for the Tyranids. Stay tuned for part 3 and see how this goes.